I made a workbench out of cheap 5x2 construction lumber. Cost me less than 250 quid, and today I'm going to show you how I made it.
I've been wanting to build a new workbench for a long time. I went down the YouTube rabbit hole and researched extensively, researching different designs, construction methods and materials, but at some point you've just got to take the leap. As a garage hobbyist, I couldn't justify the cost of a hardwood bench, so settled on a Nicholson style bench, but can be achieved with much more accessible and affordable construction timber. So I set myself the challenge of making this entire bench out of cheap 5x2s. Throughout the build I used Christopher Schwartz's Blue Workbench book as a rough guide. It's a great inspiration for anyone thinking about building their own workbench, and you'll see it lying around throughout the video as I always kept it close to hand. I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to check it out. So I'm just starting off with leg assemblies, which I built by laminating two 5x2s together. Each leg consists of one long and one short piece, which have been cut to 20 degrees to achieve a splayed out leg. Making the legs this way is really easy and will allow a recess at the top of each leg to accept the workbench's trademark aprons. Once the four legs are made, it's time to join them together to make two leg assemblies. Each assembly will be joined by two stretchers. In the book, Schwartz uses the mortise and tenon joinery in both of these stretchers. I decided to go for half laps on the bottom stretcher to save time, but started to feel bad and went for 3 mortises on the top stretcher. After cutting out the half laps on the stretcher, it's time to mark out for the recesses on the leg assemblies. Constructing using half laps definitely saved me time, and there's plenty of strength in this joint, but as I mentioned, we're going to go for 3 mortises for the top rail. Now to make the beefy top rails I'm going to have to join 2 pieces together, so I'm going to rip these 5x2s to get a clean edge, and that'll make the glue up much easier. No prizes for guessing why I wanted a new bench. So now I'm going to make some tenons on the cross rail using the crosscut sled on the table saw, just hogging out most of the material and then cleaning up with a chisel afterwards. And the mortises are made on the drill press by hogging out the material with a force and a bit and then coming back and cleaning up with a chisel afterwards. If you want to see this in more detail, then I do have a full build series which is broken down into 5 parts and has a lot more detail on all of these steps, so you make sure to check that out if you're interested. I'll put a link at the end of this video. To add strength to the joints and make sure that this bench lasts a lifetime, I'm going to be pinning the joints with dowels as well. After months of research and overthinking, it's great to see this thing actually starting to come together. And if you're in the same boat, what are you waiting for? So perhaps the most recognisable part of any Nicholson workbench are those trademark aprons, and that's what we're going to be getting on with next. In an ideal world, you'd make this out of nice beefy 2x12s, but I challenged myself to make this out of really easily accessible 5x2s. So it's time to run these through a planer to remove the rounded edges, and then break out the router with a biscuiting bit to join these boards together. The biscuits help hold these boards in alignment across the 8-foot length, but actually this is a really straightforward way of joining these boards. I then just needed to rip one 5x2 down the middle and add that to each apron to get me to the final width. I can now start thinking about adding the aprons to the leg assembly, and this is where I start to get an appreciation of the size of this bench. It's 8 foot long, which is going to take up a lot of real estate in my small shop, but I figure bigger's got to be better, right? Another trademark feature of the Nicholson workbench is the mitered corners on the aprons. Don't ask me why we do this, but we do this. You should do it too. It was about this point that I decided to move inside before this thing got too heavy. Now we're going to start looking at the top. The top's going to be supported by stretchers connecting between the two aprons, and I'm going to attach these stretchers using pocket holes. If you're looking to get a cheap pocket hole set but don't want to spend up for a brand name, then I'll put a link to this one in the description. It served me really well and I really recommend it. Down the right hand side of the workbench, I'm going to be adding a tail vise, so I'm adding in a beefier 5x2 as opposed to the 2x4s I'm using for stretchers. Now we've got the stretchers in place, it's time to start thinking about laminating the top. You know the drill, run it through the planer, hit it with a router, biscuit joints, and then glue. If you install your stretchers slightly proud, then you can plane them back and get a nice flush top. For the vise hardware, I've got two different types of screw, one for the leg vise, one for the tail vise. Both are from Veritas, came in really good prices and seem good quality, so I'll leave links in the description if you want to have a look at them. I decided to cut out a notch for the tail vise while the top was still in two halves. Much easier that way. I recently broke my jigsaw and I've not got around to replacing it. Sometimes you've got to make do with what you got. One of the things I spent most time researching was how to attach the top. Everybody seems to be unanimous that you should definitely glue down the front to the apron, but you don't want to glue the other side down because you need to factor in wood movement. So do I attach the top with screws through the stretchers? I don't really want to have screws coming up into the top of the table in case I hit a plane on one. In the end, I decided to go my own way, rely on the weight of the top to keep it down. Then I'm going to dry fit some dowels on the far apron just to resist any twisting motion. I can drill them out if I have any wood movement issues, and the weight of the top is going to keep it in place. This worked for me and seemed really solid, so I'd recommend going this route if you're struggling. How solid, you ask? Pretty solid. Now, using biscuits to align the boards definitely helped reduce the amount of planing that needed to be done, but when you're building your own workbench, there's no escaping it. You're going to have to flatten the top at some point. I used a number 4 scrub plane just to clear out any of the high spots, and then went back numerous times with a jointer plane, checking regularly for flat using the side of the plane. Because of the aprons, there's almost nothing to grab hold of, and these things are quite difficult to manhandle. I'd recommend using 2 people if you can. I could just about reach and just about manage to flip this over. I'm then just going to spend a bit of time flattening just the front apron and making sure that it's square to the top. One of the challenges with cutting a notch in a 5x2 the way I did was you get quite rough end grain. So first of all, I'm going to start by capping it off with some hardwood I've got laying around. I then just need to make a wagon, again from some hardwood offcuts that I have lying around the shop. Essentially, I'm just making a big massive block that can move back and forwards in that slot. Now we can start installing some hardware. Now that the screw's installed, I then need to make some wings on the side of the wagon that'll help the block move backwards and forwards and keep everything in position. As I'm watching this footage back, I'm wondering why I decided to flip the workbench this way to work on the vise, as opposed to flipping it the other way. This way I have to work on the floor, which as you'll see in a minute causes me some problems. If I flipped it the other way I could have worked at waist height. What was I thinking? If you want to get better at making stuff, film yourself while doing it. You'd be amazed what you find. I'm now going to make some runners which fit underneath the worktop, and that's going to hold the block in place and form part of the vise assembly. You don't want this so tight that things can't slide freely, so as you see I've left a bit of a gap underneath. And when installing the other rail on the other side, I'm going to insert a piece of paper just to give me that clearance in between. We're then just going to retain everything in place using these pieces of scrap which are screwed on but not glued. You don't want to use glue here because it might give you problems if you need to access the vise later. We're then just going to drill some dog holes that are going to sit into the vise using this drill press guide just to make sure everything's nice and square. This does come in handy when you can't take things to the drill press, so I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check it out. I'm adding in 2 dog holes just for quick adjustment and to give me as many options as possible to change pieces out quickly. And then I'm going to continue those dog holes every 4 inches across the whole top. And just like that, the first vise is done and we're on the home straight. As you can see, this allows for really quick adjustment, changing from one size to another very quickly, allowing you to get on with your work. Now I could stop here, because technically a Nicholson workbench does not need a leg vise, but I've come this far, so let's see this thing through. This leg vise is going to be made for my last 5x2. In total I've got through 13 5x2s in this build. It cost me £9.50 each. This is in late summer 2024. That means that the wood for this comes to £123.50. I got through almost exactly 1 bottle of glue at about £8.50. The screw for the tail vise cost me £38, and the screw for the leg vise cost me £45. Add in 2 pre-made vise handles at £8.50 each, and the total bill cost comes in just around £233, which I think is not bad value for what I'm getting out of this. Could I make a cheaper workbench? Yes. Could I make a workbench that costs more money out of hardwood? Yes. But this feels like a really good middle ground between value and functionality. And as you can see, I'm already using my tail vise to help with the glue up for the chop. One other thing this workbench has given me is the impetus to start YouTube. If you're enjoying this content and you want to see how I build out the rest of my shop, then please do like, subscribe and comment below. I'm going to be bringing out new videos every week, and I appreciate all the comments. There's no right or wrong design here for the chop. I took some rough measurements from my workbench book and then just freestyled what made sense to me. One last time for old time's sake. Whoops. Trying to be organised, I pre-drilled the hole for the vice screw when I built the leg assemblies. But now I've got to put the forstner bit back up through the other side and then try and hit it with a mallet to make an indent so I know where to drill. Not ideal. And while the bench is on its side, I'm going to take advantage of that fact and then drill out the holes in the apron, which are going to help massively with work holding and give me unlimited options down the road. So now we have the leg vise in place and the screw working, we just need to add a bottom rail, which is going to act as the fulcrum for the lever, which is going to give the vise its strength. So to make the bottom rail, once again I'm going to trim down a 5x2 that I have left over, run it through the planer to get it to the right thickness, and just dry fit it to make sure it's fitting through the notch that I've pre-made on the leg assembly to move through nice and smoothly. I'm then going to fine tune the through tenon, which is then going to attach this to the bottom of the leg vise. A moment of truth, does everything still line up? Nailed it. The great thing about these vices is you haven't got to tighten them massively to get a huge amount of pressure and really strong grip. So here it is. If you made it through to the end of this video, then thank you so much. Hope you found this useful. And if you've watched a 25-minute video and you've not skipped, then you know what you need to do now. You need to get started. Go build that workbench. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.